Next guest here is a guy that I've listened to for a long time locally here with Steve Dumick. I just want to say it's an honor to have him on this show. Mr. Chris Landry, welcome to the evolution of Sports Talk Television. And like I was telling everybody, it's an honor to have you. I used to listen to your segment. It was must-hear radio with the late, great Steve Dumick, the big dog himself. I got a chance to meet him and talk with him and pick his brain. But anytime you were on radio with him, like I said, you had to listen because you definitely are analytical. You break things down, of course, LandryFootball.com, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I appreciate you. It's great to be with you again. And certainly I miss Big Dog. It's hard to believe. Knew him a long time, and good friends. Just miss him dearly. Just as I said, can't believe it. But I appreciate you having me and remembering him. And exciting time for the Bucks. I've been thinking about what he'd be thinking about with the Bucks. I know he'd be excited, and so we'll finally remember him.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting a chance to meet him down at the Super Bowl, and he's definitely not the personality everybody thinks he is. You buy your drink and he'll tell you, hey, you're the guy that's competing with me. You're taking my ratings. Oh, you son of a gun. I'm going to buy you a drink. And that's the true conversation with him. So definitely great memories and talking to him. But yeah, as I ask every guest here on the Sports Web, Chris, did you ever think in a million years that Tom Brady was going to be the starting quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
No, I didn't. I thought for a while it was looking like a real possibility. Wasn't going to finish in New England, but kind of where that would be a fit. It's just I certainly as it unfolded, I still wasn't sure it was going to be. But it's really interesting. It's interesting to see how he came to his decision. And it's a real interesting fit when you look at this team and what they've done. The fact that it's kind of a short-term fix and a win-now mode for Tom at his age of his career. I can't even believe Tom, first of all, is still playing at this age. And then obviously with BA being kind of on a year-to-year basis, maybe this gives him a little life. Maybe both of them will be there for a couple of years. But it's going to be a lot of fun because both the Saints and the Bucks are in a win now mode. It's not about the future. This is not going to look the same in about maybe second year, but Breeze probably will be gone after this year. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see. And that win now mode is always dangerous because particularly this year, we don't know what the heck's going to happen. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know who's going to be healthy. So it's all in for the Bucks. It's all in for the Saints, and those are two teams that are going to be fighting it out among Atlanta, probably in the division. And yet we've got an extra team that can make the playoffs. So we're in for a wild ride, I think.
I definitely think we're in for a wild ride. Of course, with COVID-19, you hear a story from Daniel Kaplan of The Athletic, and he hears that the NFL basically is going to let the teams decide how many fans they let in. And I'm looking at this, Chris. This is definitely a home field advantage at this point. I mean, how is this going to work out for the Bucs? You've got to feel like, even though there's somewhat of a spike here in Florida, they're not going to have any problems with selling tickets for Brady and Gronk and everybody else coming in here.
Yeah, the league is kind of going through a situation where they're given parameters and guidelines of how to deal with this whole pandemic and how it relates to fans. And now the dealing with the players are a little different. That's more CBA and more NFLPA in the management council oriented. But the dealing with it with fans, it doesn't make sense. Every team is in different cities and counties, and so every situation's different. So you're right. It's everyone wants to have as large a crowd as possible, but be safe. And, it's funny because everybody asks me as if like I would know, well, particularly in the college side, the NFL, what do you think it's going to be like? And I'm like, I have no clue. Really? No, none. And no one does. No one does. And everybody, talk about people in the league, nobody really knows. It's just, to try to deal with it is, we've all, I kind of look at things and pride myself on 30 plus years working in the league and doing consulting work for teams. Now, I feel like I've seen everything. I've now added one more checklist because This is weird. This has been really a weird offseason, preparing for the draft and doing things differently. And you know what? Peter, it's thank goodness that we're in the technology age. We're able to do this show and look at each other. I mean, if this would have happened, well, 1918 wasn't real. None of this was an issue then. But could you imagine trying to do everything we're trying to do without the technology before cell phones and stuff? Because I'm going to tell you, the first, few drafts that I was involved in, we didn't have cell phones. There was no internet. All the things that you can do now. It certainly wasn't any Zoom back then or anything like that. So this is, at least we've got that to be able to have virtual teachings and a way to go as an alternative. It's not ideal, but at least it's something.
Absolutely. And he's something. That's Chris Landry of Landry Football. Of course, college football, NFL, a scout for the Houston Oilers, Tennessee Titans. You worked with Bill Belichick in 1992. You ran a combine in 1993. I mean, this right here, ladies and gentlemen, this is the reason why we have the Sports Web. And we're definitely going to get some questions from the webheads tonight. If you don't know what the webheads are, Chris, they're the texters here and also the phone line. So we have an opportunity to get phone calls and also texts. So if you have a question for Chris, definitely ask it. With Brady, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. A lot of people keep on talking about decline. You watch a lot of tape. Do you see decline, or do you see more of the fact of Brady not necessarily having the weapons and New England not doing a great job in giving him those weapons?
Well, listen, decline, yes, relative to what he was, but in the decline stage, still pretty good, and he's still pretty high up there in terms of productivity. Necessity is the motherhood of invention. We've always learned that, but in football, it's certainly a big issue with quarterbacks, players learn how to play and evolve differently. With their physical skills maybe not being as good compared to previous years, you learn to see things a little bit better and you learn to adjust. He's done that exceedingly well. And, even things like, how's this offense going to look? Mm-hmm. With Bruce wanting to be a lot of vertical game and work, well, Brady can't do that. You know what? Breaking him down, he is among the top 10 still in terms of accuracy of passes over 20 yards or more. He can still throw it deep because you throw the deep ball with your legs anyway. You just need to get, deep set and do it. I still think the guy can play. I think it's going to be a big difference because I thought the biggest thing that jumped out at me on tape during the season studying the Bucs is that, Jameis made so many mistakes. He held the ball too long. The turnovers, the interceptions people know about, but holding the ball was a major problem. And, that's not going to be an issue with Tom. The ball's going to come out quick. And certainly you're going to have to defend a 3- and 5-step drop if you're playing them. And look at the weapons that they're going to have. It's as good a duo of receivers as you have. The tight end, I'm going to tell you, Cameron Brate is going to be a bigger factor again because he's going to work the tight ends a lot more. He's going to hit the check down a lot quicker. And we'll see, with Vaughn, a veteran back that they might add. Certainly Jones is an explosive runner, but working the back out of the backfield. These are all elements that they haven't really utilized enough that I think Brady's going to do it. But, yeah, I'm going to be honest. And I'm not going to sit here and tell him, oh, yeah, he's physically as good as he was 6 years ago. No, that's not true. He's still very effective and, I think is very, very capable of having an outstanding season. At some point, it's going to end. And it's definitely on not only the back nine of his career, he's making the turn towards the clubhouse, but I still think he's got a year, maybe 2 more left in him that can be really productive physically.
And we're on with Chris Landry of Landry Football here on the Evolution of Sports Talk Television. It's the Sports Web. I'm your host, Peter Blake, giving you something to think about. You talked about the tight ends. Of course, people are talking about Gronk, but the player that I'm kind of waiting for here, and maybe you can discuss this, O.J. Howard. He has all the potential in the world. First round, 19th selection out of Alabama. A lot of people said, he's been productive, but hasn't been able to stay healthy. And then it seemed like the wheels kind of fell off last year, and he doesn't fit in this Coach Arians offense. Do you feel like Coach Arians with the 12 personnel can get the most out of Howard and Gronk and, of course, Brate?
He can. I think will it. I mean, I think, I'm a little – listen, I really was high on O.J. Howard. I think he's an outstanding talent.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, he's a pro now. He's got to up his game. The challenge of working with Brady and what he's going to demand and those things, it's going to be, the rubber's going to meet the road. He's going to figure this out. I do think it's normal for a player that's trying to find his way in the league, and maybe it's not working. They get a little frustrated, and then it becomes a little bit not in the coach's doghouse, but Bruce will tend to give his little shots whenever he wants to, just to kind of needle a guy and maybe I'm not ready to give up on O.J. Howard. I think he's too talented, and I think that you have to look at Gronk, Brate, and Howard in a predominant 12 personnel offense. You better have three guys, because if you're going to run a lot of two tight ends, you're going to, and I'm going to tell you what they're going to want to do with Gronk is they're going to want him to use him flexed out as like a slot guy, a big slot, because they did that a lot in New England. So you're going to see, a lot of, 12 personnel into the game. And sometimes with a couple of tight ends and Gronk and the blocking, I think there's a lot of things that they can do. They're going to need three to get the most and three to be healthy to get the most out of their 12 personnel set. So listen, everybody said, well, they're going to trade O.J. Howard. Well, his trade value is not elite. I still think you could get him, but are you going to get the type of value on a team that wants to win now? I didn't look. If somebody was willing to overpay for him, I think they do that and maybe sign another tight end and go that route. But I think right now they're thinking in terms of, look, this might be the launching point for OJ, and then you got Gronk and you got Brate. You've got all three of those tight ends are different. If you think about it, Brate's the great hands guy. So is Gronk, who's just freakish in and of itself. Can he stay healthy? And that's a big issue as always with him. But then OJ could be the guy that could really be the seam stretcher that is, very, very athletic. So I think it's a pivotal year. I don't have the answer of how good he's going to be, but I have a sense that he'll have his best year.
What do you think he needs to work on to reach that level? Because a lot of people comparing Howard, coming into the league, he could be a Gronk type of player. What does he have to work on, Chris, in order to reach that level?
Yeah, getting off press coverage, because a lot of people have caused him problems with that, having a better understanding of coverages. He doesn't stem his routes very well. I think that he's relied on his athletic ability a little too much, and it's the nuances of being able to get free in this league. And I think fight through some of the adversity. Ball's not coming your way. It's, frustration. I think that not to be overly, blaming, but I think a lot of balls were forced, maybe some bad decisions, and you got to fight through some of that as a player and say, you know what, do your job, be a good teammate, work. When you're young, you're a high pick. The expectations, they sense it in today's world that, people are disappointed. They're talking. I think he's just got to let that go. And you got to begin to start at this point. If it's him and you're representing him and you're saying, look, you're getting ready now to start playing for your next contract, because he's going to be in the league for a while. He has a bad year with the Bucs. He's going to get another shot, and he's too talented not to. But I think he can earn a bigger contract either with this team or another based upon how he begins to play now.
Speaking of earning a contract here, Chris, Jameis Winston goes to the Saints, of course, under the 1-year deal to learn under Drew Brees and, of course, Sean Payton. What do you think, or what factors or the reason why he didn't work out with the Bucs?
Well, I think Jameis has always been a guy. When I studied him, I've known him since coming out of high school and watching him at Florida State. I always thought he had a lot of talent, but he doesn't have great movement skills to buy time. So he's a pocket guy that doesn't really, get the ball out quickly, and he's not real patient, and he tends to force it too much. That's the reason why he throws so many picks. Yeah, there are bad throws in there, but it's bad decisions on where to go with it. I can get it in there. I can make it. Mm-hmm. You can't live that way in the NFL. You can get away with it in college to a large degree. You've got greater separation in coverage. You can make a mistake in college that you can come back and get away with because maybe you're more talented than a lot of teams that you play. Doesn't work that in the NFL. When people say things like, man, he threw 30 picks, but he threw 30 touchdowns, it doesn't work that way. For every mistake, for every bad decision and interception, you need to have 6 explosive plays to make up for that. So it's not you live with the interception because you get the touchdown. No. You're better off having a guy that throws 15 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions, because the killer in this league are turnovers. And so you break it down. All right, all the turnovers his mistake. No. You have to break it down systematically and say the mistakes that he made, holding the ball long, the bad throws, the bad decisions. How can you correct that? And that's what they couldn't quite do. It's quite frankly, my concern for him is that while he's had a few coaches, and that sometimes can be a challenge to deal with as a player, they've not had a lot of guys, and a couple of them have done a really good job with quarterbacks, have not gotten through to him. The inability to work the check down, have the completion that's the drive extender, that it's not always the explosive plays. Yet, I thought he was a good fit with Bruce because Bruce wants to attack deep, and Jameis can make explosive throws downfield. What he couldn't do is be more systematic in terms of making good decisions to get the ball to the right player at the right time. And I thought those mistakes were killers and probably prevented this team from having a real chance to win more games, because they were in a lot of games and they also missed a lot of kicks and stuff like that. I get that. But, the mistakes are killers. That will absolutely – you cannot win in the league doing that. When you look at teams that shot themselves in the foot last year, the Bucs were certainly very, very high in that list.
Do you think that's the reason why a lot of teams, Chris, stayed away from him? Not only he was coming off of injuries, of course, with the fractured thumb and the knee that you learn about, but is that the reason why a lot of teams stayed away from him? Because it was assumed with that quarterback market, and of course what Tannehill got, what Dak has gotten, that he was going to get that because of what we spoke about, being second in the league with the touchdowns and, of course, over 5,000 yards. Was it the turnovers that killed him, or was it the fact of COVID and the knee injury and the injury in itself that really held teams back?
Well, I think the turnover issue was the biggest factor. That, and I think he was, in his mind, shopping for a starting job. And it's easy to say, a lot of people will say, well, you should find a starting job. I think he's one of the best 32. Doesn't work that way. You look at contractual obligations, investments, and quarterbacks that have been drafted around the league as starters. There were not a lot of starting job open. Mm-hmm. So you've got that. Do you want to pay him starter money, close to starter money, commit long-term for a guy that's had that many turnovers? You throw in COVID, where maybe you don't get as much of a chance to sit down and learn with him. I think that contributed to that. Now, what I think was smart by him and mature by him is to say, you know what, if I'm going to be back up, I can go learn from a guy that's probably going to be there one more year and then kick into the TV booth. Learn from one of the best quarterback teachers around. And I can, earn myself a job with the starting job with the Saints or somewhere else. And, but I got a chance to learn. So if I can't be a starter, it's an opportunity where he doesn't have to commit too long. No one's committing too long with him. So it's a reboot for his career. I don't know how it's going to work, but I'll say that, if he doesn't get better and he doesn't learn in this environment, I think it's time to really start to say, is the light going to come on for him? But I will also say this, and it's different, but when I look at a guy like a Ryan Tannehill, who came out of A&M, who's a receiver, and didn't play a lot of quarterback, comes in and, right there in the south part of the state at Miami, and, he's really kind of find his niche in Tennessee. I got paid well. That is an opportunity for Jameis, who had more passing skills coming out of college. Now, if he can figure out how to play quarterback better, there is no question that his career it could have another life and could be better. I've always been, challenged with the fact that the mistakes are killers. That doesn't have to define him the rest of his career. It has to this point. It's up to him at this point. It's all on him. He's got a great opportunity, and he's going to get a chance to kind of do what he can do and show the head coach and that really good quarterback room that in the meeting rooms each and every day and in a practice that, you know what, I can be your guy here, and we'll see what he can do with it.
And we're on with Chris Landry of LandryFootball.com, of course, a talent evaluator for decades. I was going to say decades for the Houston Oilers, Tennessee Titans, of course, the Cleveland Browns, worked with Bill Belichick himself, set up combines. Let me ask you this with the draft process, kind of, Bruce Arians talked about this about a month ago, 400 reps being lost to the rookies. What kind of effect do you think that's going to have on rookies? Tyler Johnson is being talked about, Antoine Winfield, but you lose those type of reps, you got to feel like, Chris, there's going to be some type of impact, right?
No doubt about it. Virtual teaching, as we talked about, at least we got that, because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to do anything, but it's not the same. And the timing and rhythm's not the same. And we know Brady's convinced some of those veterans to come out, and we're out together, and that's great. But these rookies, it's tough because, look, the big thing people always say, well, rookies, OTAs and all that, very important. They come in, they get to learn. You go through your installs. It's a good pace for young guys. They get to go through it again, and then, it starts to become secondhand a little bit, and then it's a better chance. Now, the one thing is everybody's in the same boat, but it's not a advantageous situation for young guys. But I do think, particularly in the case of Antoine Winfield, one of my favorite players in this draft, you can still get something out of some of these guys. And I think he can have an impact early because, what you might do is he still may play. He may not be able to handle everything initially, but it can be very effective blitzing. He can be very effective in the box and stepping over trash and defending the run. And he's got some ability to cover a slot. I still think he can be a third safety and a inside cover guy that can do certain things for him and help. And then Tyler is in a good situation where he doesn't have to come in and he's not like he's looking to be the number 2 guy, certainly not a number 1 guy, but in a number 3 receiver role in packages, I think that's what you're going to have to do. Just you give them a little bit on their plate and just kind of go from there and we'll see.
Yeah, Mike Giardi of the NFL Network was kind of saying he believes Scotty Miller has the advantage because, of course, he knows the offense. But Tyler Johnson, 5th round comp, Chris, you know this all too well. That wide receiving class was very deep. Any other given year, Johnson most likely is a 2nd or 3rd round pick. In this case, he's a 5th round selection. And like I said before, a big time building block for that Minnesota program and PJ Fleck, who's got that program going in the right direction, right?
Yeah, is an advanced route runner, and that's he can run a little bit more on the route tree than most guys do, so that's good. But like everyone else, I feel bad just from a whole development standpoint that we've lost this offseason. But with other sports losing their season or parts of it, we're hopeful that we can get through it somehow, some way. But I wouldn't give up on young guys contributing. But it's going to be it's going to retard the progress. And I think overall, we may see the same amount of snaps out of rookies, but when we go through the grading process, that may not be quite as good because, as a whole, everybody, just because it's much more challenging.
You look at the safety position. We talked about Winfield. You think this organization likes Whitehead because he came on before the injury, and they also drafted, and you're a big SEC guy from LSU, of course, Mike Edwards out of Kentucky. Could you see the Bucs kind of putting 3 safeties on the field? Because it seems like they have a lot of confidence, especially with Winfield being a premium pick and also Edwards having some time last year in this Todd Bowles' defense.
Yeah, I think Edwards can. I think both of those guys can really. I do think you'll see it. That certainly, 2 ways you get better, right? You get your players that you have better, and you get better players. I think they've done a little bit of both. I think certainly they've added a couple of key guys, but I think when I looked and studied them this past year, I thought Todd and that defensive staff as a whole did a good job. I thought they got better play out of them down the stretch, even though the record may not have shown it in certain issues. I absolutely think it. And they're going to have to, because if you're going to play against, in this division, Atlanta and New Orleans, you better have guys that can match up. And in order for Todd to run his defense, which is going to be highly aggressive, you're going to want to have those guys. So that's where a guy like Anton will be on the field potentially, because I think they'll use him a lot in blitz work. That's something that I think if he's on there, he'll have the ability to be able to have an impact there, because that's what they want to. They want to be hyper aggressive. And then, of course, one of their problems, obviously I thought they got good pass rush. Obviously, Shaq was really good, but they've got to get JPP has to be healthy. They need to have some really good breaks, because they're not deep enough with pass rushers. And if you don't have enough depth there and you're not strong in the fourth quarter to complete and finish your pass rush, and you don't have enough on the back end, then that's a real problem. And quite frankly, that maybe leads to some of the issues where offensively they felt like they had to be hyper aggressive and try to make chunk plays all the time. I think that all fed into the mistakes on offense, the over aggressiveness. So I think they do interconnect, and I do think that improving that area was the focus, and I think they did. I think they really did on the back end.
Yeah, and I mean, they got a lot of young talent back there, Chris. I mean, Jamel Dean out of Auburn. You got Carlton Davis, and then also Sean Murphy Bunting. And it certainly seems like, look, with the youth, there's definitely some questions because they're not big names, but I kind of think people are, looking at them and not necessarily taking them seriously, because they made some plays last year in that second half of the year. Consequently, with getting rid of a player like Vernon Hargraves, who wasn't tackling, giving the most effort, it gave those kids the opportunity to really take their bumps. And I almost feel like they're better off for taking those bumps, because in a second year of Todd Bowles' defense, they may thrive.
Well, yeah, and particularly both of them, but particularly Carlton is really long, and he can lean on receivers. And I think that, again, if you've got better play at safety, you can really force those guys inside and become really effective, and I think be a better coverage unit. So there's no question. I think they're going to be, a lot better as time goes along. And I think this year, I don't know if it'll be marked improvement, but I think we'll see improvements. And I do think playing those guys young, that experience is going to be pivotal.
And we're on with Chris Landry of Landry Football. Get on the phone lines if you have a question, Webhead. 727-255-0391. It's 727-255-0391. It's the Sports Web. I'm your host, Peter Blake, giving you something to think about. Join the 65,000 following we have here on Facebook, of course, being live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Definitely get on the phone lines, because this guy definitely knows what he's talking about. Let's talk about this offensive line. Much has been made, Chris, about Donovan Smith and what you said about Jameis Winston holding the ball. But, Smith with that big-time contract, some question marks, protecting the blind side of Tom Brady. What do you see with Smith? Can he improve on his game, or is he a weak spot, a weak link on this offensive line, in your opinion?
Well, he has been, no question about it. And I think he's got to play better. There's no doubt about it. I think from a technique standpoint, I think he's got to improve. There's no doubt his hand usage, but I think it's in him. I do think it's in him. I also think that, with the ball coming out quicker, it's going to help him a whole lot. I think a lot of it's confidence. A lot of it's, you can see this a lot in New Orleans with Breeze. The offensive line's good, but even like with a guy like Whitehead, who very athletic but very, very raw. He was an instant hit because Breeze could protect him a little bit, and I think Brady can do that as well. Now, Brady doesn't move as well as Breeze, kind of stepping up into the pocket, but getting the ball out, I think, is really pivotal. But he's got to step up, no question, and then obviously Wirfs, I think, can be really, really good in the run game, and they need that because they need to run the football better. And by the way, that's how you can really slow down pass rush too. You'll be able to, when you've got the ability at the line of scrimmage to get into a better play, run the football. I mean, you see that a lot. And I know that Brady was given a lot of freedom in New England and that's one of the things at the line of scrimmage to make those decisions. And that really can help your offensive line too. When you're able to get out of a bad play into a better play, sometimes you become, and you'll see this, all right, look, the offense is going to look one week like, oh, this is what they're going to do. Then all of a sudden next week they're running it 50 times, and the next time they're throwing it 50. Playing situational football is something that you can do a little bit more to keep defenses off balance, and that in and of itself really helps the confidence of the offensive line. And I think they need it. And Donovan needs it, no question.
All right, let's go out to the phone lines. Johnny Dean, the professor from Pennsylvania. Welcome to the Evolution. You're on with yours truly, along with Chris Landry of LandryFootball.com. Go ahead.
How's it going, guys?
Doing good, bud.
One quick question, Chris.
Hey.
This linebacking core, not just Dylan White and LBD, but you take the outside linebackers with Shaq and JPP. Could this be the best linebacking core in the NFL? I'll stop that and listen.
Well, it's certainly one of them. And obviously when you have good edge rushers that play sometimes with 3 and a 4 point a 2 and a 3 point stance, because they'll play some 30 fronts and they have two guys that can rush, I think they get a lot of credit and a lot of notoriety, and well deserved. When I think of them, I think it's a really good group. I think White's a really good player that's going to get better and better. I was a big fan of Levante David coming out. We talked at the beginning with Big Dog. I remember when he came out of Nebraska, and the more I studied him, I said, gosh, I hate saying it because he was a good friend to Big Dog and somebody I love. But so this guy, and I didn't mean this to say that this guy was gonna have the same career, but this guy's Derek Brooks. I mean, this guy plays like him, and doesn't mean again he's gonna have the same type of career. Guy's been an all-pro. He's been a great player. And so I would say absolutely. Now I think of JPP not as a linebacker, I think as a rusher. So, but yes, what he does for them and what he means for them, absolutely. When you look at the foursome there, because you have that extra guy where the 40 fronts have 3 guys and they have different roles. Mm-hmm. I would say for what they do and how they do it as good as anybody. There are a couple of other groups that maybe do a better job in a 40 front, some in drop-in and coverage, but this group does a great job.
Is David the most underrated player in the league, not only defensively, all across the league? Because it seems like, Chris, he should have made a lot of Pro Bowls, and because the Bucs have had a lot of losing seasons, he really doesn't get that publicity that he deserves.
I tell you what, football people really, really know how good he is. So football people is not underrated, but probably in terms of notoriety, yeah, I can't explain some of the voting. He's a great player. He's not good. He's a great player. He really is. And he's a joy to study on tape because he's just not a lot of false steps, makes a lot of plays, very instinctive. Instincts, toughness, and what I, covet and respect the most out of linebackers. You throw in the athletic ability, guy can do an awful lot of good things. And I do think Devin White, as I mentioned, is going to be a really good one. So the group as a whole is pretty good. So the linebackers are good. The edge guys, they have a whole different role. They're good in what they do too.
Shaq Barrett, 19 and a half sacks, basically came out of nowhere. Of course, being behind a Von Miller and a Bradley Chubb will do that. Can he duplicate that? Is he a one-year wonder? And why haven't the Bucs signed him to a longer term, in your opinion?
I think they want to see it again. JP, to answer your question, JPP needs to stay healthy. The thing I worry about is where's the pass rush going to come from? Because having JPP and him really helps them. I mean, you got to make some protection decisions there. If you were to lose JPP, I think obviously it's going to be a little bit tougher. You get Shaq on air some, but they'll chip them more and more and work away from them. And then you don't have the pressures, you don't have the sacks, and then you're not the same, which is, again, part of what we discussed, being able to cover a little bit more. You get a little bit better on the back end, but you can't fix everything all the time. You don't have enough picks. You don't have enough high. You never have enough to do all the things you want. But if I looked at it and said, well, where are the Bucs' issues? Do they have enough pass rush in rotation? Can they go deep enough? And if they can answer that question in the affirmative, it'll be good. So yes, Shaq, I don't know about the numbers being the same, but he still, I think, has a chance to be pretty good. But part of is the fact that he did play behind those guys, and I think they want to see him do it again. And I think they want to say, I think they had an interest in signing him, but I think he wanted to, rightly so, live off that 1 year. And if you live off that 1 year, you're paying him like maybe one of the very, very best. And I think before their willingness to do the very, very best, they'd like to see it at least a couple of years, which makes it difficult because if he does it again, it's going to cost even more. But at that point, he's probably closer to being worth it than what his asking price internally was after this past year, when you just don't know if it was a 1 year situation. I think the guy's really talented. He really is outstanding.
All right, if you got a question for Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com, 727-255-0391. It's 727-255-0391. It's the Sports Web. I'm your host, Peter Blake, along with Chris Landry here of LandryFootball.com. So looking at Anthony Nelson, 8 tackles, you showed some flashes of brilliance, but he couldn't stay healthy. He's a 4th-round pick out of Iowa. What do you see with him? Can he assume that Carl Nassib role? Because, of course, they lost Nassib to the Raiders. Do you think he can come in? Or is that one of the weak points in one of those spots where maybe a Jason Light would take a flyer on a Clay Matthews?
It's a great question. I don't have the answer. I think he can be. If he can be close to what Carl Nassib is, that's what I'm talking about. And having somebody that can play, that can give some snaps so that, the key guys up front, Via, Sue, those guys are a little bit fresher so that they are those guys. The biggest thing that I think that jumps out on tape that maybe folks miss is they look at like defensive linemen and they think, they look at how good a player is. If they're playing an inordinate amount of snaps in the fourth quarter, they can be Aaron Donald. And they're not the same Aaron Donald as they were in the second quarter as in the fourth quarter if there's not enough rotation. And so that's what I mean by that. And I think Davis is the perfect example of a guy that can fill that role, and I think he's got enough versatility to help. And if he can, that's part of what I'm saying is, my question about do they have enough depth, probably why you answered, you're on top of it. That's what we're going to find out. I do think he has some natural ability. I don't know how much of a factor he can be in the rotation, though.
All right. You talked about the running back situation. For me, Ronald Jones, I feel like the potential is there. He was a 2nd-round pick out of USC. When you get him to that 2nd or that 3rd level, he's really able to make special things happen. Do you feel like this organization, first and foremost, still believes in him? And do you feel like the reason why he hasn't really kind of maxed out those expectations is because of the volume that they're giving him? Split carries with Peyton Barber. Now he has the opportunity to most likely start, but you also have Keyshawn Vaughn, who they drafted in the 3rd round out of Vanderbilt, and also Calais, the 7th-round pick. So it certainly seems like the Bucs have some competition, but with Jones, is it the fact that the Bucs are not giving him the volume to really succeed?
Well, it's a chicken egg thing because I think the giving them the volume really put them a little bit of a liability in protections. It limited them in the passing game. So here's the thing. As a talent, Ronald Jones is outstanding. He's got explosive qualities to be a really good feature back. As you know, in today's game, the ability to do multiple things at the running back position is really important. So if you, by your personnel grouping, you dictate what you're doing, it doesn't work as well. So it's one of the things that young backs have a little bit of trouble with is, people say blocking. It's not like they don't know how to block. It's they don't know who to block. So identifying the Mike, when the Mike replaces the Will and all of a sudden they're not quite sure where to go and then the quarterback gets hit, that's the biggest issue, that you're a little bit lacking a trust with some young guys. So you want to give them more work there, but when you give them more work and they're not quite ready, it's, again, you got to earn it. So I think he can be a really explosive back. I think he got a little bit better with his hands and working in the passing game. I think he's getting better there. When he can do that and become more well-rounded, then you're not necessarily dictating, oh, on first down, we're going to run it. We got Jones in it. There's play action. There are things you can do with it. You can throw to him in the check down, and he's where he's supposed to be. He can adjust to it if pressure's coming. There's a lot of things that I think you can do with them. Vaughn is really good catching the ball and being able to run the flare route and adjusting. So that's really good. And, the thought about maybe signing a veteran that can do that. Now, the pros and cons of that is, you when you're going to play guys, you get a veteran guy that's a back, that's a role player. Well, that guy's probably not playing special teams, so you got a real dead spot. Whereas I think Vaughn can be a really good special teams player and fill this role, but can he pick things up, and do all the things and pick up that we talk about to where he can be in some 2-back sets when they want to run it, single back sets, and yet still can run it, still can catch. I think all those things are going to be intriguing, but the running back position is one in which that it's not been quite as good. It's kind of been like two ships in the night, finding the right match. Maybe with Ronald maturing a little bit more as a player, and if Vaughn could have some early impact, it may be the best year we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years with the Bucs.
Do you see with Vaughn, do you see him being a James White type of player? Does he fit into this Bucs defense as that, or do you see more? Some people were saying James White. Others would say Alvin Kamara. What do you see with Vaughn?
Alvin Kamara is a different animal now. There are not many Alvin Kamaras. No.
Right.
He's James. He's more, if of the two, he's more James White.
Okay.
I think he can run the football though. I mean, James can too, but no, I think he's the role of the versatile guy. I mean, Kamara is versatile, but Kamara is a feature back. He's a versatile back. I think that Vaughn is a good back. Look, if you want to say it, Vaughn was more productive in college than Kamara, but he doesn't have the skill set that Kamara has. Kamara is an absolute beast. I mean, he's just ridiculous. When he's on big, fast combination, they don't make too many guys like that, and injuries killed him last year. But, no, I think he helps him in a role, and I think he could play and be effective as a runner. But if he can be half of Alvin Kamara, I think the Bucs would be thrilled with that.
I mean, they've talked about Devontae Freeman, but it certainly seems like he wants more money than $4 million. So there's a possibility that he could sit out this year. What about LaShawn McCoy? And, Adrian Peterson kind of talked about it today. He wants to play until he's 2023, but I almost feel like with McCoy, he's kind of declined. Is that a player you could see the Bucs signing, or possibly a Freeman? Or once again, do you see the Bucs just being happy with what they have at running back?
Well, I think the answer is whether they're happy is in the early stages of whatever we're going to have. I mean, we're going to have preseason as far as we know. I mean, they're still on the table of, eliminating a couple of preseason games if they have to. So we'll see. I mean, I think it depends upon how the young guys do, because they're going with the young guys. I don't see them making the move now unless it's at the right price. And I don't think McCoy or certainly Freeman at his price makes sense for him. But if there's concern coming out of camp preseason that this is not going as well as we'd like, he's not going to be quite ready, they might consider that. The other thing to do is to take it all the way to where if you feel like, Vaughn can be the guy, but early on he might not, you can always take it, and after opening day sign a veteran, where that way you're not from a cap standpoint, you're not guaranteeing the salary for the guy if he's not on the opening day roster. So if there's a veteran guy that you want to bring in, he might be able to help you early, and then you might, make the moves. But again, you got to look at your running back room and how's that looking right now. No, but I do think I do think it's still a possibility that a veteran could be added, but it's in place of somebody that they currently have right now, or in addition to, with an idea that, they might be a short-term fix to bridge with Vaughn. If they think Vaughn's a long way off, then I think they'd be more inclined to make a move for somebody.
Good stuff, Chris Landry of Landry Football. Go ahead and promote yourself. I know a lot of Bucs fans appreciate you because they remember those 620 days. They love the breakdowns. And like I said, look, if you want to make this segment type of deal where you come on Wednesday night and we talk Bucs football and talk about scouting, I'm more than welcome to have you here on the Evolution of Sports Talk Television. But go ahead and promote yourself, my friend.
Well, LandryFootball.com got started a few years ago. First of all, what Landry Football Operations is the scouting arm of the work I do, consulting work, scouting and coaching consulting work for NFL teams, college programs. And about 5 years ago, in fact, one of the guys that convinced me to do it was Big Dog. He said, you need to do this, and fans. And one of his people that he worked with in WDAE just was the guy that became my webmaster and still is. That kind of put all that together because, I have a hard time, clicking the right buttons and I'm in. So what we decided to do was come up with a website that for the fans that, okay, we'll peel behind the curtain, give them an insight into the coaching and scouting world, but evaluating the things that they want to know. The inside information on players, teams, coaches, schemes at the college and NFL level. So from recruiting boards to draft boards to free agent boards to news and notes in our notebook on a daily basis to film room previews during the course of the season to recaps after the games, we do all of that. So that's what we do. It's like having an access to your own scouting department. It's very inexpensive. We constantly run specials. Like right now, the scouting season, it's less than $5 a month, and you can check that out. You can try it out for a month, 3 months, whatever. But that's what we do. We have gotten into the podcast business as well, and do college podcasts, NFL podcasts, and I have added because I like the way people like yourself do it, and a lot more talented people. I've hired some guys that we are breaking out just this month of July. We're going to have a whole series of podcasts on the Landry Football Podcast Network. So currently, I do a podcast for every conference in the country. So I'm going to have kind of give that to people that I think can be maybe a little bit more entertaining and take those. I still do my national stuff. So we're going to have we're going to have a handicapping guy, which Big Dog love that. He was always into that. So we got a lot of that stuff going that we're really excited. That's all part of LandryFootball.com. That's free. So, follow me on Twitter at LandryFootball. Check us out at LandryFootball.com. As I like to say, if you like football, you'll love LandryFootball.com. So it's certainly been great being with you.
Absolutely. And again, a big fan of what you do. Definitely breaking down stuff. We'll have you on the Sports Web again. Thanks for your time.
Please do.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate
Good
you.
luck. Great job.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.